fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
We are officially back in black. New Jersey black sea bass, of course. 10 fish, 12.5-inch size limit through October 31st. Then it's 15 fish as of November 1st. And those sea bass are hungry and prolific. I'm Jim Hutchinson with a New Jersey, Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine here on the docks in Barnegat Light, checking out the Carolyn Ann 3, which will not be in her slip on Thursday because she's going to be out black sea bass and probably every day until the end. Probably the same thing with the Miss Barnegat Light as well. Don't worry about the fluke. I know we're done with fluke, but it's sea bass. That's what it's all about. And the Miss Barnegat Light has been sailing offshore for tuna as well. Tuna, swordfish, one of the many party boats at the Jersey Shore, which when they get those windows, the Jamaica, Paramount, Gambler, so many great boats heading offshore to get in on that tuna bite. But again, this weekend, it's all about the black sea bass. I mentioned them being hungry. They have not been touched, not really seriously targeted. We had that bycatch limit through the summer. But especially here in the interior part of the state, because you think about it, up in New York, the New York guys coming into federal waters, they could fish in federal waters, so they might be hitting some of those northern federal reef sites off the Jersey coast. Same with Delaware. But those inshore reefs, they're the ones that should be loaded with black sea bass if you're heading out. And I think the Axel Carlson being inside of state waters should be a pretty good bite. Wherever you are, Monmouth, Ocean, Atlantic, Cape May County, it's all about black sea bass this weekend. For a lot of these party boats, it's going to be about pieces of clam, right? On a high-low rig, drop and load, drop and reel. I hope that's the way it is. I hope it is for you this weekend. But if you're looking for some of those humpbacks, you might want to drop a jig, whether it's a slow pitch, maybe a bucktail with a piece of gulp, maybe a Fish Bites Fight Club paddle tail or something like that. But just keep in mind, there's a lot of cocktail blues out there as well. Sometimes when you're working those jigs at the top of the wrecks, even though this is where some of the bigger humpbacks are, you're also going to get inundated with some of those bluefish as well. Nothing to complain about, getting a couple of cocktail blues to take home as well. But we do have some stripers too, and I know that's one of the big things in the fall. It's a big thing for me, waiting to find out about that striper run. We do have some good fish, primarily in the north, which is a good sign for this tournament because the 66th annual Long Beach Island Surf Fishing Classic commences as of this Saturday, October 10th. It runs for 9 weeks, all the way through December 13th. You can register this week at one of the 3 tackle shops, Fisherman's headquarters in Ship Bottom right as you get on the island. You can go north to Surf City Bait and Tackle in Surf City, or go down to Beach Haven, Jingles Bait and Tackle. Get one of these great new hats when you register for the tournament. And also, I just found out that the folks from Tsunami just sent a big shipment of plastic shads. So I think they're going to have those as giveaways as of Saturday as well. A late tip for you late sleepers, but that tournament gets underway this Saturday. Another tournament on another barrier island just across the Barnegat Inlet is Nick Honachesky's 2nd annual Barrier Island Beach Brawl. That's from Manasquan down to Island Beach. Manasquan Inlet and Point, all the way down to Island Beach, the North Jetty, but you got to be fishing out front. Great little tournament. It goes on for 2 days, October 9th and 10th. That's Friday and Saturday. Get all the details at Nick's website, saltwaterunderground.com. So let's take a look at those striped bass. We know we got to start to the north for the migratory run, right? I think it's underway. It's getting to a slow start. Water temps are still a little bit warm, but we are getting some reports of striped bass up in northern waters. Striper fanatic Chuck Manny, he's been out live lining, back at it again. He's telling me they're not giants, 18 to 26 pounds is all. Those are solid fish. Would like to see an 18 to 26 pound striper along the beach. Again, he's live lining. Akira at True World Tackle, he's also a charter captain. He's been putting his clients into some decent stripers in the lower Hudson. Also found out this week from Keyport Marine Basin, talked to Mike Farilli, Pop's Toy. He said Gary Kaplan had a 20 pounder just shy of 35 inches. He was eeling on the lower Hudson, top of the tide, just as it was going out. So those stripers are starting to run. Haven't seen too many signs of big fish, but it's only a matter of time at this point. Last week we talked about the northwest wind. We had a good stretch in northwest last week. Comes from the north, a little offshore, pushes the warmer surface water temperatures off, brings up some of that cool upwelling. Then it also pushes the bait out front. I know I was out Spring Lake Saturday afternoon, fish are blitzing. They look like a lot of false albacore, but a lot of bait. It was stretched from Belmar and Asbury Park all the way down to Bay Head. I think some of the beaches in LBI as well. If you were lucky enough to get a cast into the mix, you might have found out what they were. I didn't hook up, but it was a good sign. Hopefully, we'll get more of that. And hopefully, too, this new moon, the next lunar phase that we have is the new moon next week. Maybe that, with a dose of offshore wind, is what we need to really kickstart things into action. We do have some northwest wind in the forecast for this week inshore, Thursday and Friday. The other thing I like about that offshore wind, gives you a good opportunity to do some sight casting or look for where the birds, where the bait, where those swirls are. So look for some of those northwest winds on Thursday or Friday. Meanwhile, we can expect to see remnants of this latest tropical system that's battering the Gulf right now. Expect to see the remnants at the end of the weekend into early next week. I think that's also going to adjust or affect the offshore bite as well. I bumped into John Tiedemann earlier this week. We were fishing together on a northern Ocean County stretch of beach. He's the guy that did that great striper migration article in our October edition. John said he was in Stone Harbor last week, had the equipment, had the gear, tried to throw some casts, got a little one. The reason I say that, a lot of times we think of that north to south migration. I'm not even going to start fishing until I hear what's going on in Ocean County or Monmouth County. If you get the opportunity to hit the beach, especially higher tide incoming, light, early morning, late afternoon, that dusk time, take advantage of it. Make sure you have a plug bag, your rod ready to go. Throw in some of those SP minnows, the top waters, or the swim shads. Don't wait for the reports, make them wherever you might be able to go. The bays and sounds, though, throughout the state are loaded with bait, peanut bunker and other baits, so the sedges and sod banks offer a good opportunity to get out back if you still have the boat in the water. Skinny water fishing right along those sedges and outside the creek mouths. I know Rich and Kim Calkins, they checked in a 33-inch striper this week at Chestnut Neck Boatyard in Port Republic. So that's good to see. Mullica, Great Bay, Little Bay, Absecon Bay. In fact, Riptide Joe had his kids on the boat recently for some cocktail blues and a nice 22-inch weakfish. They were looking for striped bass. That's a nice bycatch, according to Andy at Riptide Bait and Tackle. Meanwhile, Mike Zlagowski let me know that he, Steve, and Dan, they found an all-day bite on Grassy Sound over the weekend, dunking green crabs for tog and sheepshead. A nice 5-pounder here for Steve. The sheepshead bite has been terrific. So bouncing those green crabs or those fiddlers or the Asian crabs, even cheddar crab or calico in the back looking for some sheepshead. You also have that tog. You have that one fish tog limit until November 16th. It's actually until November 15th. Starting November 16th, we can start our blackfish season, right? That's when our bag limit goes up. But again, those greenies and crabs on a jig head or even on a traditional, maybe a Belmar style rig around those jetties, they could get you some tog this week. In fact, I found out from Josh Taylor, he and his buddy Steve were poking around the jetty rocks, had blackfish primarily 12 to 14 inches, but a couple keeper size, 15 inches. He said he went through 4 dozen crabs in the process. A lot of bites. So my buddy Nick Perillo told me, I bumped into him today in Barnegat Light. He said he was working the South Jetty rocks, he and a buddy. A lot of baits lost, a lot of smaller tog, but those tog are there along the rocks. And again, you also have a chance at a sheepshead. More than just sheepshead, too, if you head down into Cape May County, talk to the folks at Hands 2 Bait and Tackle in Cape May for our report this week. They have croaker, kingfish, weekies, and Cape May goodies, spot, all in the mix. Jeff there at Hands said there's been an influx of redfish around the inlets in Cape May as well. They're taking those crab baits. They're also taking mullet, both live and chunked. Good sign. Only a matter of time before those speckled trout arrive as well. Stripers are also in the 20 to 24-inch range. They're around those jetty rocks. Jetty jocks are getting them, and as well, the boaters too. Throwing those plastics along the jetty rocks. Some of the boaters, Jeff told us about this week from Hands, he said some guys are finding the false albacore within a mile of Cape May Point, which stands to reason. There's a lot of bait moving down the beach. Talked about some of that bait dumping out of the inlets. False albacore, outstanding light tackle fish. not so good on the grill. But the false albacore, you see them busting out of the water, get a good opportunity for some light tackle action. In fact, Dave Wojciechowski, he had an awesome trip on the Paramount last Friday. They were offshore catching bluefin, had a good trip on the way in, also played some catch and release with some of those albies as well. Good fun. The Triple Rex, the Hudson, the Hot Dog, General Canyon bite has been solid. It continues to be solid, although now we're getting into that time of year where it's tougher to find those windows. Greg Lally, he saw our fishing reports posted online this week. Tom P., our offshore reporter, said somebody came in for a bunch of flats of sardines at Creekside Outfitters. Jeff said that was me. He loaded up his Ford with 3 flats of sardines at Creekside Outfitters, took a trip south of the Hudson on the Marcy H, going 3 for 3 on Big Eye. A wolf pack came through, had him up to 180 pounds. On the way in, they picked up another couple of 70-pound yellowfin at the triples. I'm not happy, not looking good for that offshore forecast in the days ahead, especially with that tropical system coming up from the Gulf at the end of the weekend into the early next week. We had 6 to 10s on Wednesday. I mentioned talking to Nick Perillo. He said he's still going offshore on Friday. It's looking 3 to 4s, could be a little bit breezy, but he's getting out there. Keep an eye on that NOAA forecast if you're thinking about getting to the triples or the hot dog or chasing mahi along those pots. You do have another shore-bound option. That comes to us from Bobby Matthews at Fisherman's Den, who said he got the first winter flounder report of the fall. Customer Jimmy had stopped in and let him know he was chumming for kingfish in Shark River Inlet. Got onto one of those blackbacks. Don't forget, we still can catch those winter flounder. The season is open right now. I know Captain Ralph aboard the Last Lady out of Neptune, also there in Shark River. He's been out doing some mixed bag fishing before the start of black sea bass, but he's been on those wreck sites enjoying porgies, ling, triggerfish, and yes, even a couple of winter flounder here and there as well. It's a good reminder. Nick Honachewski has a great article in the October edition of the New Jersey Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine. It's called Not Just Sea Bass, Make It a Combo Platter. Sea bass is what we're after this weekend, but keep in mind this time of year you also have the opportunities with the triggers. If you're farther north, you get a good opportunity with the porgies. Could be any number of species down there, so make sure you gear up or give some thought to those other species. Pick up the October edition and get more details from Nick, because there are plenty of options and plenty of surprises to be had at those reefs and wreck sites as well. Here's a surprise from one of the reef sites. It came to us over the weekend, the biggest summer flounder that I know of out of Lewis in some time. It was a 12.69 pounder this past Saturday for Paul Elwood. He was fishing on the Katydid out of Lewis Harbor Marina. That's a giant. Yeah, don't forget, those Delawareans, they still have their summer flounder season. Even though ours is closed, Delawareans continue to fish throughout the season, throughout the rest of the year. So if you want to jump on one of the head boats down there, you have the sea bass and you also have some flounder opportunities. Closed. I was reminded of that on Friday, throwing a 5-inch tsunami swim shad up along the beaches of Sandy Hook. Got one of my better fluke weeks after the closing. Speaking of Sandy Hook, if you're fishing Sandy Hook, I want you to remember something. As of October 1st, the false hook is closed. The Army Corps is doing some dredging. I've got that coming in next week's edition as a reminder, but that's part of the National Park Service. So the folks that are guarding up there, they're carrying some heavy weaponry. So if you're thinking about going past the signs and disregarding the closure at the false hook, you're going to be in for a surprise. But keep that in mind. It's probably going to be throughout the rest of the year and into 2021, but you can still fish in plenty of locations in Sandy Hook. Just don't try to get to the false hook. Let's head west for a 90-second update with my friend George, the Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. You know, this is the time of year when all you got to do is wet a line, and you're probably getting into something here in the lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers. I'll tell you, things are just so good everywhere. Guys are catching smallmouth, crappie, you name it, they're catching it. It's all over. But I want to give you a few examples of some great fish being caught so you guys can get out and get on with yourself. Let's start over in New Jersey. We had Bayside Dave check in, and he was out fishing some bass, some ponds and lakes there by LBI, and he was getting into some nice bass with some soft plastics. Thanks. Great job there, Dave. Now, Justin Lerner was a little bit further west here over in Round Valley, getting on those lake trout. There's a great lake trout bite. They're starting to move up in a little bit shallower water, get into that pre-spawn pattern. So now's a great time of year to get on those lakers if you like doing them. Now, back talking about bass, Jen Wong was out and he was catching a mixed bag of just about everything. He was catching some pike, some bass, but here's a real nice largemouth he got up there in North Jersey. Great fishing there, Jen. Got to get out with you one of these days. Now, moving over to Pennsylvania a little bit, we had Tim Keebler of Fin Seeker Guide Service. He was out on the Delaware and got into this monster smallmouth. He said that bite is really on, guys, so if you want to get out and get smallmouth on the Delaware, now is that time. And over in the Susquehanna, things are going great too. They're catching a lot of flatheads. Nick Canestra was out on the Susquehanna and he got in some great smallmouth bass. He said the topwater bite is just on fire. And what's better than smallmouth on topwater? It's just a great fishery. Guys, it's all going on. I hope you guys get out and enjoy it. From Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
George's hat reminds me of something. Maja Tools, Maja Tackle. This Thursday, October 8th at 7 p.m., Gabriel Tackle, their Facebook page. Go check it out. Anthony Maja Jr. is doing a trolling seminar. It's virtual. It's on Facebook. But you can find out about the tactics, the techniques to catching striped bass, both on the troll with the mojos and also with those spoons. The benefit of Facebook, pretty sure, is if you miss Thursday's broadcast, make sure you check out the Gabriel Tackle Facebook page because you can watch that virtual seminar anytime you feel the need. And I'll tell you what, trolling for stripers, I think we're just about that time where it's worth a shot. These coastal waters, of course, are warm. And that still means that we've got plenty of those tropical visitors. They're still in tight. In fact, over the weekend, Joe Handley here caught a pretty impressive 3¼ pound pompano using sand crab. Check that in with the folks at Jingles. Most of those pompano we get are the little guys. That's a good one for the table. Red drum, too. We get an occasional shot at red drum. In fact, red drum and kingfish are also on the board in this 66th annual Long Beach Island Surf Fishing Classic that kicks off this Saturday. Make sure you stop by one of the tackle shops, check in on that tournament. If you're doing any fishing along the beaches of LBI this season, all the way through December 13th, you get a chance to win. So stop into Jingles, Fish Heads, or Surf City Bait and Tackle. I will see you here on the beach. At the very least, I'll see you next week here online at thefisherman.com.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.